I've had doty boys crawl my cab with flashlights, sheriffs sniff diesel like they're sommeliers, and dispatchers hang me out in snowstorms. But I never had a cop plant a bottle under my seat and smile about it. That night on County 12, his grin glowed in the strobes. He wrote my future like it was already true. DUI, suspended, rig impounded, career done. I watched my whole route map go up in blue and red smoke. Problem was, he forgot about two things, my truck's eyes and his partner's conscience. My dashcam doesn't blink, and the rookie riding shotgun sure as hell did, when the story he was told to tell didn't match what he'd lived. I could see it in the mirror, the way he stared at the bottle, like it arrived from a magic trick he didn't clap for. I kept my voice steady, called my wife to hear me sober, and let that camera drink in everything, the found evidence, the timestamps, the way the sergeant said, "We'll make it stick." I'd hauled rebar, onions, and a church's Christmas pageant across state lines. I could haul a lie to daylight too. By morning I wasn't just a driver with a problem, I was a man with a plan, a partner who wanted out, and a tape that didn't care who wore a badge. I don't carry a lot of titles. My name's Mac Lawson, owner-operator, one truck outfit. Registered out of a tan ranch house on Juniper Street, Pine Ridge County. Freightliner Cascadia, 12 years old but stubborn, white paint gone chalky from prairie sun. My wife Dana says I treat that truck better than my knees. She's not. Wrong. I torque my own lug nuts and I like my coffee burnt. I chase clean scales and keep my CSA score boring, because boring means the mortgage gets paid. The rig isn't pretty the way catalog trucks are. She's honest. My dash has a sun-faded photo of Dana and the kids tucked near the tuck. The passenger. Footwell keeps a milk crate with straps, roadside triangles, and a wrench with my old man's initials pounded into the steel. If you know trucks, you know a man's cab is a story he tells without words. Mine says, "Pay attention, don't waste fuel, and never let a stranger reach where your hands already know the shape." That week I'd been bouncing between grain silos and a pallet mill outside Briar Ridge. Light loads, back roads, time to think. County 12 runs flat through scrub and soy, a ribbon folks cut across when they don't want the state troopers on 75. It was just after sunset, sky like an old bruise, when the cherries lit up in my mirrors. I eased onto the shoulder. Gravel pinged my tanks like birdshot. He came up slow, hand on the pillar like he owned the night. Sergeant Clay Danner, Traffic Interdiction Unit, Pine Ridge Sheriff's Office. Mid-40s, squat, gut like a plow horse, mouth trimmed into a bristle that looked like it could sand hardwood. I'd heard his name at truck stops, usually as a punchline that wasn't funny. Quotas were a rumor nobody could prove, but everybody knew who made numbers sing. Passenger side, a younger man hung back at the C-pillar. Officer Ben Ortiz. Fresh haircut, eyes that hadn't learned to lie yet. He kept glancing at the red light. On Danner's Bodycam, like it was a gospel he hoped would keep the night honest. License, registration, proof of insurance. Danner's voice had that performance rasp. "You're weaving. Lane control." "Wind at my tail," I said. "Light." "Trailer, I'm keeping it off the rumble." "Step out," he said, like we were skipping the warm-up. I killed the engine, clicked my hazard, set the brakes, and stepped down. The air smelled like cold dirt and roadkill. Somewhere in the dark, coyotes let out a laugh that made my skin tighten. He ran me through field sobriety on gravel, heel to toe, where stones rolled under my boots. 2 steps in, he shook his head like he'd seen enough. "You've been drinking," he said. "No, sir," I said. "Coffee from the co-op. I can blow right now." He didn't answer. He leaned into my cab, the light from his shoulder making my dash look staged. I saw his hand go below the seat. He made a little noise like discovery. Well, he said, coming out with a half pint of Evan Williams, cap off, 3 swallows missing. The smell hit the air like a dare. "You know this is a commercial vehicle, right?" Ben's face did a small betrayal. "Not much, but enough to notice if you're a man who lives by mirrors." His eyes flicked to my center console, where my dash cam sat steady as a preacher. "Sergeant," he started. Dana cut him off with a look. "Driver is under arrest for DUI," he said loud, like he wanted the coyotes to hear too. "Turn around." The plastic cuffs bit hard, cold metal against wrist bones. He read a version of my rights that sounded like a bedtime story told too fast. "I asked for a breath test," he said later. "I asked to call Dana," he said after booking. He called a tow for the rig and a ride for me. They sat me on the bumper while the red-blue painted the ditch. Ben stood 5 feet away like a man checking the floorboards for a trap door. He kept swallowing like he had a bad taste he couldn't place. Dana talked low into the radio, then stepped back to my cab. I watched his hand again. He tucked the bottle inside, pushed it deeper under the seat like he wanted to make sure it got filmed from the right angle later, if anyone asked. "Cameras rolling," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Mine and yours," he smiled. "We'll make it stick," he said, almost gentle. Booking was fluorescent and humming and smelled like old mop. Breath test came an hour later, 0.0. He said, "Machines make mistakes. Blood draw at the..." Clinic came after that. I signed a paper I couldn't focus on because I was counting the minutes my truck was bleeding storage fees in some tow yard behind razor wire. They let me call Dana at 2:11 a.m. She kept it together better than I did. "You're sober," she said like a fact, like the way she says the sun comes up. "We're going to take this apart, piece by piece, piece by piece." That's what you say when your life just got unscrewed and you don't know where any of the hardware rolled. I made Bond by breakfast. I walked out into a sky the color of old steel, holding a manila envelope with court dates and a brochure about the dangers of alcohol. My phone had messages from a number that wasn't in my contacts. When I played them, I heard silence and breathing. On the third one, a whisper. "He told me to say I saw you reach. I didn't." Click Ben. I called Dana, then my buddy Rooster, who runs a yard with more cameras than a casino. He picked me up in a truck that needed shocks, and we drove to the tow yard, where my Cascadia sat behind chain link like a caged bull, dust already turning to paste on the hood from the mist. A man with a clipboard and a jacket that said Jake's. Tow and Recovery told me I couldn't touch my truck until the sheriff's office cleared it. Evidence hold. He smiled like the storage clock was a friend of his. I asked him if he knew a judge. He laughed. That afternoon I started making calls, first to a transport lawyer who'd gotten a buddy out of a logbook jam 3 years ago. Leah. "Puck, plain voice, fast mind." I told her the short version. She told me the preservation letter version. "Write it," she said. "Email it, fax it, certified mail it. Demand they preserve and produce. Full Bodycam files, pre-event buffer, metadata, dispatch CAD, AVL pings, chain of custody on the bottle. And Mac," her voice edged softer, "do not meet with them alone. Not internal affairs, not the DA, not without me." I wrote the letter at the kitchen table while Dana sliced apples for the kids' lunches like she was cutting the night into pieces it couldn't reassemble. We sent it every way a letter can fly. Leah filed appearances. We set a bail review. We marked the calendar like a battle board. Then I called Ben. He didn't pick up. I drove to the station and watched him walk out at shift change, his uniform creased and his eyes ringed with the kind of tired you can't sleep off. I didn't move until he was at his car. When he saw me, he flinched like I'd shouted. "I can't talk to you," he said, looking over my shoulder, then past my ear, then at the sky. "You already did," I said. "You whispered the truth and hung up." He swallowed. "I can't." "You can," I said. "You just won't get to keep the same friends." He closed his eyes. "He said you reached under the seat." "I reached for my registration in the visor," I said. "You were there. You saw." He rubbed his jaw. "I saw what I saw," he said. "And I heard what he told me to write. Then write what you saw." He shook his head. "You don't understand how it works." I understand rigs, I said. When a bolt is stripped, you replace it. If you don't, the whole wheel comes off and kills a family on a Sunday drive. He laughed once, a broken sound. Then he got in his car and sat with his hands on the wheel like he was waiting for permission from somebody I couldn't see. The first letter from the DA arrived 2 days later, like a bruise blooming. They were moving to suspend my CDL pending prosecution. A civil hearing would be set. My insurance flagged me high risk. A dispatcher I'd worked with for 6 years texted an apology and said the client didn't want me on site until this cloud cleared. Clouds don't clear, I thought. Wind clears clouds. Work. Leah filed for access to my truck. The judge signed a limited order. Retrieve electronic devices. No disturbance of the rest. We drove back to Jake's tow and recovery with an order that might as well have been written on a napkin the way the clerk looked at it, but it did the job. We pulled the Dashcam SD card like a treasure from a dry well. Rooster cloned it 3 times in his office while his kid made us instant coffee so thick a spoon could stand in it. The footage from the night was clean. It showed Dana's approach, the lean in, the sweep of his shoulder light. Audio caught. His breath and the sound of fabric, the familiar rip of Velcro when he adjusted something on his vest. The angle didn't catch his hand under the seat. It did catch a glint of glass in the reflection off my chrome tank when he turned. 1 frame, maybe 2, enough to make my skin prickle, not enough to make a jury say, beyond a reasonable doubt. Bodycam, Leah said. We need his body cam. We filed, we pressed, we waited. The sheriff's office sent a response that read like a shrug in legalese. Technical issue, device failure, a corrupt file from minute 2 to minute 5 of the contact, pre-event buffer unavailable, chain of custody on the bottle, recovered from under driver seat of CMV by Sergeant Dana at 1942 hours. No lab results yet. Leah nodded at the paper like it had done what paper always does, give you something to hit with another piece of paper. Fine, she said. We subpoena the vendor. Body cams aren't magic. They have logs. They have audit trails. They have an automatic 30-second pre-roll without sound. If they say it's gone, somebody made it gone. That night, Ben called again. No whisper this time. I told him to log the bottle, he said, voice shaking. He told me he did. The seal was different when we got back. I know I sound crazy. You sound awake, I said. You sound like a man who wants to keep his soul. He said I'd get floated to the courthouse if I made waves, Ben said. Traffic court, crossing guard detail, the whole joke. He said he'd tell everyone I froze during a stop, that I put you in danger. You're in danger if you... Keep covering for him, I said, and so is everybody who rolls through his county. He was quiet long enough for me to hear tires hiss on wet asphalt in the background of his call. If I write it down, he said, they'll eat me alive. Find a place to file it where their teeth can't reach, I said. State AG, or give it to Leah, or both. 2 mornings later, my mailbox had a letter with no return address. Inside was a photocopy of a property room log with a scribble over the seal number and a second set of initials that didn't match the first. Tape over tape, that's what it looked like. Someone had opened the bag and fixed their lie with another. We added it to the pile. Leah's office looked like a crime board without the yarn. ELD logs printed out like hospital charts. CAD timestamps. From dispatch that we pried loose, which showed the stop time as 1944, not 1942, which made the chain of custody even uglier. A radio transcript where Dana called for tow before he'd even finished my field test. He was moving me like freight. Press, Leah said, almost to herself. He lives on numbers, on optics. He wants his name on the board every month. He won't admit anything to IA, but he'll slip when the lights are brighter. Like a press conference, I said. She looked at me and smiled a little. You really want your face on the 6 o'clock? My face already lives on a billboard. By the highway, I said. Max haulage. Phone number in black. Might as well own the story they're writing about me. We started feeding facts to a reporter who wasn't afraid of a dead stare from a badge. Kiara Doss, Channel 7. She moved like a woman who's been told no a lot and made that word shy. She asked for on-record, off-record and everything in between. We gave her documents. She asked for the Bodycam. We told her it didn't exist. Not yet. That afternoon, the truck bled again. Jake's tow sent a notice of intent to auction if storage fees weren't paid within 30 days of impound. I wanted to throw a brick through something and watch it. Break! Instead, I called the bank and asked for a deferral. They said maybe. Dana squeezed my hand like she was holding onto a wire that hummed. The DA called Leah and offered me a deal. Plead to reckless. Keep your CDL after a suspension. Pay a fine, attend classes, be grateful. Leah put the phone on speaker. I listened to the sound of a career dying politely. No, I said. We go to the wall. You might lose, the DA said like she was telling me the weather. I'm already losing, I said. There's a difference between losing honest and losing to a liar. We set motions, we set hearings. Ben texted a photo of his memo book to a number I keep just for trouble. The notes were neat, time-stamped, and they contradicted his own. Official report in small ways that mattered in court, and in big ways that mattered to a man's sleep. He'd written, Sergeant retrieved small bottle from jacket. In the report, retrieved from driver's seat. Leah whistled low when she saw it. He's either going to save you or get crushed trying, she said. I started wearing a baseball cap low in grocery stores. A man at the feed store asked me if I'd learned my lesson. I asked him what lesson that was. He said, don't drink and drive. I said, don't believe everything you're told by people who need to keep you scared. He didn't buy me any corn. Then the email came in from a Bodycam vendor account Leah had subpoenaed, an automated fulfillment link, followed by a human apology. Someone had clicked send too soon, or the clerk was a decent person on a Tuesday. We downloaded the file in her office with hands that didn't feel entirely attached to our arms. It was ugly. Pre-event buffer, 30 seconds of silent footage before the camera officially starts. The world in a fisheye that makes men look like they live in a curved jar. Dana at his trunk, rummaging. His hand dipped into a go-bag. He pulled out a half-pint of something brown that caught the last smear of sunset like a joke. He palmed it, then tucked it beneath the flap of his jacket. The camera went live with sound a few seconds later as he walked toward my door. The angle was bad, the view partial, but the shape of the bottle's label was a brand the property sheet listed exactly. Leah didn't say anything. She just hit pause and rewind until the pixels became a confession you could touch. We sent it to a forensic tech I know from my cousin's union work, a quiet man named Ravi who can make ghosts real. He stabilized the frames. He circled the outline of the bottle with math. He lifted a reflection off my fuel tank where the chrome turned the scene into a silver postcard. Dana's hand entering, then leaving my cab, fingers set in a grip you use when you place something, not when you find it. We wrote a letter to the sheriff with a link and a question mark. We CC'd the county commissioners and the state AG. We hit send and waited for Thunder. Thunder came in a press release. The sheriff's office announced a press conference for Monday morning regarding an ongoing personnel matter and community concerns. They like those words. Makes you think they're listening while they lay down sandbags. Dana ironed a shirt for me. You don't have to be up front, she said. You can stand in the back and just be the man who knows the truth. I'm a trucker, I said. I stand behind things all day. For once I'm going to stand beside it. The night before, Ben called and said his mother thought he should quit and move to Arizona. I hate cactuses, he said. Voice and grammar both frayed. Cacti, whatever. You could stay and look your chief in the eye, I said. That's a kind of quitting too. You quit being the person they want you to be. He laughed a raw laugh. He told me if I show up tomorrow, I'll regret it. Show up with me, I said. If we regret it, at least it'll be for the right reason. We met in the parking lot under a sky so clean it hurt. Ben's uniform looked like he'd ironed it in a hurry. He had a bruise of sleeplessness under one eye and a Bible verse taped in his hat he wouldn't show me. We walked into the press room, fluorescent lights buzzing like bugs. Cameras on tripods made a forest that stared without blinking. Chief Margot Keane took the podium. She's the kind of leader who can make "good morning" sound like a warning. The sheriff flanked her in a suit that didn't fit quite right, sweat already gathering under his sideburns. The DA stood to the side with a poker face that made me want to break a chair just to see it change. The chief did the dance first. "Thank you for coming. We value transparency." Then she surprised me by veering out of the script. "There have been allegations," she said, slow. "Allegations of misconduct by one of our supervisors. We have obtained corroborating evidence. Effective immediately, Sergeant Clay Danner is suspended without pay, pending arrest for evidence tampering, perjury and official misconduct." A photo popped onto a screen behind her. Danner's face, official and blank, looked like a man who thought the mirror would always like him. Murmurs rustled the room like wind through corn. The chief held up a hand. "We will be releasing body-worn camera footage related to this incident. We have also referred the matter to the State Attorney General." Ben stood a half step behind me and to my left. When the chief said, "We will be releasing," he exhaled like a tire when you press the valve and hiss away pressure you didn't realize could be measured. A reporter asked a question about me. Without saying my name, like I was a rumor, the chief looked at me anyway. "Mr. Lawson is here," she said. "He requested to be present. We cannot comment on the criminal case against him at this time, except to say—" She paused. "Except to say that we take the integrity of evidence very seriously." They played the clip. 30 seconds of silence, where the room quieted the way rooms do when people aren't sure which way gravity is about to tilt. The tiny bottle appeared, like the world had reached out and handed us a key to the door that had been locked since County 12. The questions came like hail. The sheriff tried to say words that made him sound like he'd been as surprised as us. The DA said the process would play out. The chief held her spine like steel and said policies would change. Any device failure would trigger an automatic. Internal audit, pre-event buffers would be pulled and reviewed in every complaint. Supervisors would be barred from solo stops unless exigent circumstances were documented. Then Chiara asked if officers who told the truth would be protected from retaliation. The chief looked at Ben, not at me, and said, "Yes." Ben coughed, nodded, and stepped forward. His hands shook a little, but his voice didn't. "I wrote what I was told," he said, and the room went still enough to hear camera shutters. Click. "And then I wrote what I saw in my own book because I felt sick. I should have put the truth in the report first. I didn't. That's on me. It won't happen again." He swallowed. "Not if I keep this badge and not if I don't. Maybe it wasn't a movie, but the hair on my arms lifted anyway. In the back, a detective I recognized from town court clapped once. It echoed like a starting gun." The sheriff mumbled questions about ongoing investigations and asked for privacy, like a man who'd never had to earn any. The chief closed the notebook in front of her with a soft finality. "We'll take one more," she said, and a man with 2 white teeth asked if the department would apologize to me. The DA took that one. "We will speak through the courts," she said. So we did. The weeks after the presser were mean and long. Danner was arrested and posted bond the same day because money respects its own. He walked out of the courthouse with eyes that dared the world to judge him. He told a reporter he'd never done anything wrong in his life, and God knew it. His lawyer squeezed his elbow like a handler at a dog show. My hearing on the CDL suspension turned into a strange little side court where Leah argued with the DMV like she was sawing through a frozen rope. The judge peered at evidence the DA hadn't seen fit to give me before because they like to bury it under "we're still reviewing." The pre-event buffer made the judge look like he'd swallowed a battery. He reinstated my CDL pending outcome. I walked out and sat on the steps and cried in a way I hadn't since my old man handed me his last wrench and said he was done chasing winters. Dana's union rep called the Bodycam clip ambiguous. His lawyer called the reflection pareidolia. The DA called a grand jury, and they called it probable cause, and we called it Tuesday. Ben got floated all right, on paper. They stuck him on records for a week. Then IA invited him to talk about his leak. He said he didn't leak. He said he told the truth. He brought Leah with him and a recorder that beeped like a seatbelt sign in a bumpy sky. They frowned, and wrote and frowned again. He went back to patrol with a partner who didn't talk much and a silent radio when his unit number came up for backups. Keep your head on a swivel, I told him. He said he'd buy a swivel if the county would let him put it on the requisition list. Leah built the case like she was framing a house. Foundations first, Dashcam video, ELD ping map, CAD timeline, breath test, blood test, clean, blessedly clean. Then the studs, Bodycam pre-roll, reflection analysis, memo book, property log with the tape-over-tape scar. She found a retired property room clerk who'd lost her job 5 years ago after rattling the wrong cage. The woman testified that seals don't change themselves. We added a nail gun, a jail call Dana made that sounded like a man who thought his phone was special. It ain't nothing, he told somebody who said bro a lot. He's a driver. They'll plead him down, they always do. The DA smiled when she played that. A small, sharp thing like the glint of a knife somebody finally remembered. They owned. Then came the squeeze. Someone slashed the tires on my pickup in the night and threw a rock at our front window, missing the glass and breaking a planter Dana loved. I put cameras on the eaves and a bat by the door. At the grocery, a woman I'd delivered a piano for last Christmas crossed the aisle to avoid me. At church, Pastor Lyle prayed for forgiveness in a way that made me feel like I'd already been forgiven for something nobody could agree on. The tow yard sent another auction notice. We scraped and paid. I sold 2 generators I'd been fixing. For side money, Rooster put me on a short haul at cost just to keep my legs under me. I drove that loop like a taped-up boxer still stepping into the ring because the bell doesn't care about your ribs. Trial came slow, and then all at once. Dana's case first. The DA wanted him convicted before they took mine to trial because it makes juries see straight. His lawyer tried to keep the Bodycam out. The judge let it in. The jury watched a man pull a bottle from a bag and tuck it under his jacket like a boy hiding candy from a math teacher. Ben took the stand and told the truth 3 ways: what he saw, what he wrote, and why those were different. The union rep stared a hole in the back of his head. The chief looked like she hated every second and knew exactly how necessary it was. Ravi sat straight and talked like wire, tight, unbending, exact. He explained pre-event buffers and checksum hashes and how pixels can hold a memory even when a man wishes they wouldn't. The defense lawyer tried to make him say the bottle could be anything: a phone, a flashlight, a sandwich if you were hungry enough. Ravi didn't blink. He pointed at the reflected label shape on my chrome tank and at a still frame where Dana's fingers curled like a man placing, not removing. He said the word tampering once, and the judge told the jury to ignore the characterization. You can't unring a bell. The defense brought in a training officer who said field conditions are dynamic and officers make split-second decisions. Everybody nodded. Then the DA asked how long it takes to walk from a trunk to a cab with a bottle in your pocket while thinking about how you're going to make it stick. The training officer said he didn't understand the question. The jury did. The verdict took 4 hours. Guilty on tampering, guilty on official misconduct, guilty on perjury, not guilty on a charge so small I forget what it was, except it let his lawyer crow in the hallway like he'd won. The judge remanded. The cuffs went on. For a second they were too tight and Dana flinched. The deputy loosened them, professional, gentle. I thought about symmetry. My case evaporated like dew on a hood. The DA moved to dismiss in the interest of justice. The judge granted with prejudice. Leah shook my hand and then hugged Dana like women who've had to be mean together at a table full of men who smirk. At the next press conference, the chief didn't pretend it was anybody else's fault. "We failed Mr. Lawson," she said. "We failed Officer Ortiz. We failed ourselves. We will not be failing in the same way again." They rolled out a Bodycam policy with redundancies upon redundancies. They contracted for external audits. When footage goes missing, they took supervisors off solo interdictions. They did not call them quotas anymore in meetings. They called them performance benchmarks, because the world loves a word that means the same thing but wears a nicer suit. Dana got 5 years. He'll serve less. That's how it goes. He lost his badge, his pension, his little kingdom of gravel shoulders and flashlights. He appealed, because of course he did. He'll be appealing the day I retire if he can string it out that long. The department held a ceremony where they pinned Ben with a commendation that looks like every other pin, until you know how much it costs a man to earn one like that. He stuck it on his dress blues and shook the chief's hand, and then hugged his mother, who did not move to Arizona. I got my rig back with a new stutter in the starter that I fix by banging my fist against the column every other morning like I'm trying to shock a heart back to beat. I still drive County 12 sometimes because the shortest distance between 2 points is the road you're not scared of anymore. The shoulder there has weeds that look like the kind of plants that survive anything. Still think about the first time I met Dana's eyes, the way he smiled, like he had tomorrow trained to sit and roll over. Men like that don't believe in cameras. They believe in control. A lens is a bad god for a man who needs to be worshipped. At truck stops now, drivers buy me coffee and tell me their own little nights. The ones with wrong plates, wrong faces, wrong tones that made a ticket grow teeth. I tell them the same thing every time. Keep your camera rolling, keep your binder neat, keep your breath honest, keep the numbers. Don't scream unless it's worth waking the town. And if a man with a badge smiles too easy, make sure you can prove why. I'm not a hero, I'm a trucker. I stack miles and I stack facts. I show up early, I leave late, I shake a lot of hands, and I write down what was said because the world is made of words first, then actions. And I don't assume anybody with lights on their roof is more human than me just because their uniform fits. When I pass the station now, I sometimes see Ben on the steps with a coffee and a look that says he slept. He lifts his cup at me. I lay on the air horn once, a quick blast that feels like punctuation. He laughs. The night on County 12 lives where it lives, in files, in memories, in the kind of story that keeps a town honest for a while. There's still a chipped planter on my porch. Dana says we'll fix it when we feel like it. I say we leave it. I like looking at something that broke and didn't decide that meant it had to be trash. I like reminding myself that if you hold the line, if you hold it with your camera, your dates, your courage, and a rookie's shaking voice, you can tilt the ground just enough under a crooked man's boots that he learns what it feels like to slide. But that wasn't the end of it, not really. There's what a verdict does on paper, and there's what a verdict does to a town. Pine Ridge is the kind of place where a rumor can pass you twice before lunch. The diner by the rail spur put up a handwritten sign, "We support honest cops." The word honest did all the heavy lifting. Some folks pointed at the sign and nodded like they'd invented the idea. Others stared at the floor and stirred their coffee. Until it went cold. I got a call from the state motor carrier office. Not a courtesy call, an audit trigger. "Standard when there's a DUI arrest," the woman said, voice like a bookshelf. I told her the case was dismissed. She said the system lags, that I should be ready for a records review. I told her I keep logs neat enough to eat off. She said bring them anyway. Bureaucracy is a machine that likes to run, even when there's no freight to move. Leah didn't blink. Let them look, she said. When you have nothing to hide, an audit is a stage. So I laid out my binder like a person sets the table for company he doesn't particularly like. Hours of service, maintenance, bills of lading, fuel receipts. With corners dog-eared, the auditor sat at my kitchen table and asked why I always bought diesel at the same 2 places on Tuesdays. Points, I said, and the coffee doesn't taste like watered barn. She smiled despite herself and ticked boxes a little softer after that. Ben had his own stage. IA decided to close the file with the kind of language that lets everybody say they did their job without saying what job that was. He kept getting calls at 2 in the morning where nobody spoke and someone breathed like they were practicing. Being a ghost, I told him to change his number. He said if he ran every time a bully coughed, he'd be running out of his own skin by Christmas. A man in an untucked shirt followed me through a grocery store and told me real men take their licks. Quietly, I asked him if he'd ever seen a man take a lick while a camera was rolling, and the truth felt like gravel in his teeth. He said I was making our town look bad. I told him the town made itself look bad when it handed a man like Danner a flashlight and a quota. He left his milk in the cart and walked out. Insurance came back around like a bad penny. We'll reinstate, the rep said, but at a higher premium until the civil case concludes. There wasn't a civil case yet. There will be, she said, like fate was an entry on a spreadsheet. Leah said to breathe and keep receipts. We'll make them pay for the months they strangled you, she said. But first, we nail that's sticking up. Danner filed an appeal. His new lawyer wore prettier suits and said the trial was tainted by media coverage. The appeal's brief read like a man trying to convince a locked door it should be a window. While that ground through the gears, the DA opened an investigation into other drivers he'd arrested. Cases fell like shingles in a windstorm. A woman, who'd pled to careless to avoid losing her job, came up to me in the parking lot of the post office and hugged me like I was a tree in a flood. I got my record back, she said. My mum can stop looking at me like I'm a stranger. Ciara asked me to sit for one more interview, not on the courthouse steps this time, but in my truck. We set the camera on the dash, and she asked me what I'd say to drivers who don't have a Leah or a Ravi or a Ben. I stared at the road and told her the truth. Not everybody wins. Some guys plead because rent doesn't care what justice is supposed to look like, but you give yourself a fighting chance by never turning your camera off and by writing down what was said, even if your hand shakes so hard the letters look like ants. A month after sentencing, I hauled for a church mission, and the pastor asked if I'd talk to a youth group about standing up to people bigger than you. I told them about torque specs and about how a lug nut doesn't care how you feel, it cares how you turn. I told them about Ben's hands shaking and about how they stopped when he started telling the truth out loud. Kids understand more than we let them. One girl raised her hand and asked if I was scared the night on County 12. I told her I was scared the whole time, and I did the next right thing anyway. That's what courage is when you don't have anything fancy to call it. A damp Tuesday, a letter with a state seal arrived. The Attorney General's office wanted statements for a policy review. I went in my best shirt that still had a shadow of grease at the cuff and sat under lights that hummed like a truck idling 2 rooms away. I told them about pre-roll buffers and how easy it is to say a file failed when what failed was a man's character. I told them about tow yards that grow fat on nightly harvests and about how a town can talk itself into thinking that making numbers is the same as making safety. They asked what would have stopped Danner sooner. I said a partner with an older badge who cared more about being a good cop than being a cop. People call good. They nodded like they wished they could print that on a poster. The union held a meeting in a hall that smelled like varnish and old speeches. I got a copy of the agenda from a guy who fixes their coffee machine. On page 3, a resolution to condemn media-driven scapegoating. Ben sat in the back in a plain shirt with his hat pulled low. When someone said his name without saying his name, a few heads turned like they were checking where the exits were. After, an older sergeant with a chest of ribbons he'd actually earned shook Ben's hand and said, "Took guts, kid." The room got quieter by an inch. Months later, the civil suit did arrive, the one the insurance woman predicted like weather. Not me suing anybody, 3 other drivers suing the county, Dana named in bold, the department and the tow contractor. And kisses blown in every direction lawyers know how to aim. Leah asked if I wanted in. I said no. I wanted my miles back, not a check 9 years from now and a name in a paragraph strangers point at and argue about. I gave a deposition anyway, because truth has a way of dragging you back to tell it again. I keep the Bodycam stills and the reflection prints in a folder that lives under the passenger seat, with the triangles and the wrench. Sometimes, late and alone on a dark stretch, where the world narrows to 2 white lines and a hymn the tires sing, I think about how close the bolt came to backing all the way out. It's one thing to lose a job. It's another to lose the story. You tell your kids about what kind of man you are. Once, months after, I saw Dana in a prison transport on the freeway while I was rolling west with a load of drywall. You can tell those vans from a mile away, the way they ride low like they're tired. I didn't honk, I didn't wave. I watched the van in my mirror until it was a dot, and then it was gone, swallowed by distance like all bad weather eventually is. The planter on the porch still sits chipped and stubborn. Dana puts marigolds in it now. She says they like poor soil and neglect. They bloom like something that doesn't know the meaning of quit. She says that's fitting. I say she's right. I got asked to sit on a safety panel at the county fair. The kind where a trooper points at a wrecked car and teenagers swear they'll never touch a phone again. I brought my Dashcam. I played the 30 seconds of silent pre-roll and let the tent fill with the sound of nothing. I told them sometimes, the silence is where the truth hides, and you need to know where to look when a man tells you a story that doesn't fit the timestamps. When I lay down at night, the sound that finally lets me sleep isn't the hum of a reefer or the tick of a cooling manifold. It's simpler. It's Ben's voice saying, "It won't happen again," and the tiny mechanical click of a camera that didn't know it was about to catch a man making himself small. I still carry the brochure they gave me the night they booked me, the one about the dangers of alcohol that smelled like a paper mill. It's folded and soft as cloth now. I keep it to remind me what a system looks like when it thinks it knows you after 2 minutes in a parking lot. Every man deserves more minutes than that. Every man deserves a camera that remembers what he can't when his hands are shaking. If you're rolling through Pine Ridge and you see a white Cascadia with chalky paint and a driver with a cap pulled low, that's me. Flash your lights if you believe in cameras. Flash them if you ever had to hold a line while somebody with a badge tried to erase it. Flash them if you've learned the difference between a man doing a job and a man using a job to do people. I'll flash back. Then I'll keep rolling, because that's what I do. I haul freight, and sometimes I haul the truth to where it can be unloaded in front of everybody. Flash one more time by tapping the red subscribe. Hit the bell so the next haul of truth finds you. Got your own camera saved me story? Drop it in the comments. And if someone still thinks drivers are easy marks, share this and let the lights do the talking.